Welcome to The Blue Dot, Northern Kentucky's premier political podcast, brought to you by the Kenton County Democratic Executive Committee. And welcome back to The Blue Dot podcast, where we have another great candidate interview in store for you today. And this one's for a position a lot of people, even political nerds like me, may not know a lot about, and that is the county commissioner position. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm Natalie MacDonald.
And I'm Koehl. You're right, Natalie. When we think about government, we often look at the big national headlines or the immediate issues on our own street. But there's a massive layer in between that handles everything from the roads you drive on to the way your community grows, the county fiscal court. Today, we're joined by someone who has spent the last 8 years in the trenches of local government. Sarah Froelich is a 4-term Park Hills City Council member, now running for Kenton County Commissioner, District 1. Sarah, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Natalie and Brian. It's so nice to be here, and I'm excited to talk with both of you today. This feels like a kind of conversation we'd be having anyway. We're just doing it here with microphones.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sarah. It's so good to have you here. And as Brian said, you are currently serving on Park Hills City Council, where you've worked on local issues and making decisions for Park Hills around things like communications and economic development, financial oversight, infrastructure, and zoning, just a lot of different issues there. And you've also worked professionally in strategic communications and content leadership. But let me hand it over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself so our listeners can get to know you just a little bit better?
Sure thing. Okay. Well, I've always been someone who shows up and gets involved, even long before I thought about running for office. And professionally, my communications background actually started in nonprofit event planning. Don't tell anybody.
I didn't know that. Fun.
But basically figuring out how to invite people in, make them feel welcome, help them understand why something was important. And shortly after that role, I earned an MFA in something called design criticism, which really trained me to listen like a journalist and have real human conversations with people across all kinds of topics and fields. So I carried those skills into writing and storytelling and eventually into the tech world. You're going to see, I'm going to cover a lot of ground. So let's hold on to your chairs. Okay. But so in the tech world, I played a big part of my job has been really helping people learn how to use complicated products and feel confident using them. So at its core, a lot of what I've been doing professionally has been about meeting people where they are and making information accessible. And all the while, during all of the things I've done in my professional work, I've always been a volunteer, both political campaigns and also civic organizations, even as far back as high school. And that instinct really has carried with me when my husband and I bought our house in Park Hills. And I started volunteering locally, going to city council meetings, helping with community events, working on the city newsletter and website, really just investing in the place where we live. And after a while, people started saying, well, you're already doing the work. Have you thought about running for office before? And it really took me a minute to see myself that way. It probably took about 7 asks, actually. But eventually, I realized that stepping up felt like a natural extension of what I was already doing. And that's how I ended up running for city council the first time. And now, after 4 terms, and with many more experiences, it's one of the reasons why running for county commissioner feels like the right next step.
Wow, that's a great foundation, and experience for not only city council, but now for county commissioner. So let's start with the basics. In Kenton County, there are 3 commissioner districts. You're running for District 1. A county commissioner has a lot of key and very important responsibilities that people may not be aware of. Can you talk to us a little bit about what a commissioner's role is and why it is so important?
Of course. So at the most basic level, a county commissioner is part of the county's legislative body. So, which is in Kentucky, this is called the fiscal court. And in Kenton County, that body is made up of 3 commissioners and 1 judge executive. Now I'm going to kind of pause here for a moment because despite the name, it's not a court and the judge executive isn't a judge in the legal sense. The judge executive is the executive branch and the commissioners serve as the legislative branch. So what the fiscal court really does is decide how the county raises and spends money. The fiscal part is the very clear part right there.
That
Yeah,
part makes sense. Yeah.
that makes sense.
Exactly. So that's the core responsibility. Commissioners help set the budget and allocate funds that come from the county or from the state, and those dollars support a wide range of services that people interact with every day. So, just to, I can go down a really long path with this, but includes things like animal services, the county clerk's office. Think vehicle registration and elections, zoning and planning. That's a huge one. Public safety, parks and recreation, things like support for mental health and services for aging population, and much more. And even when the county isn't directly delivering these services, it's often funding them, coordinating them, or setting the rules that make them possible.
It's amazing to see how much goes into it, to be honest, right? And I think it's a lot of work being done behind the scenes that the general public just doesn't really know about, to be honest. So it's pretty fascinating. I think you're giving us a peek into some of the behind the scenes things that happen that a lot of us don't think about.
Well, and I think so. I think it's important to recognize that I don't want these things to be, or I don't think we should want these things to be behind the scenes. I mean,
Right,
I
exactly. Yeah.
also
Mhm.
understand that, like, we as, regular people, we can't always understand all the things. And that's why we elect people to stand in that space for us, to represent us. So I think, Brian, I think you mentioned something to me earlier today, about how county government and city government are connected.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Because
I
I
want to
was,
kind of,
yeah, let's talk about that because I was researching a little bit before trying to figure out what county commissioners actually do. And as we talked about, prior to the pod, it's a broad spectrum of responsibilities. And I wondered how much those mapped to what you're doing as part of Park Hill City Council. And you had, really good, discussion around how those all kind of, work together and interwoven.
yeah, so I think of it like this. So if city government is managing the day-to-day life inside of the house, let's say, like, the house that you live in or the building that you live in, county government is responsible for the foundation and the systems that make that structure work. So think of things like broader infrastructure and public safety and zoning governance, as well as connection or access to additional funding opportunities for those kinds of things. And the reason why, just going to kind of tie this back a little bit to what we were talking about a minute ago, the
Hmm.
reason the county commissioner role matters so much is that these decisions really create the framework for how our communities function. So it's like having another layer of local government, and county government is where the long-term priorities get set, and when it's done well, it really helps our cities thrive and it keeps our services running smoothly, and it makes sure public dollars are being used in the ways that reflect the needs of the people who live here.
Yeah. And then you also mentioned, just to add one more thing, I thought, which was really good. It's kind of like the county government is really kind of like the pivot point or the connector between state government and local government in some ways, which I had never really thought about that. I mean, it makes sense the way it'd be kind of layered or tiered like that.
That's exactly right. So, um, you know, I think a lot of folks kind of miss that or don't know that that connection exists, that
Hmm.
basically the county is operating in some respects as a way of providing and sort of filtering or funneling the federal and state funds that come our way to all of the services that we use every day.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the point I was trying to make when I said it was behind the scenes. I wasn't trying to, say that it was like this mysterious thing,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think things happen, right? I mean, things happen, and sometimes oh well, how did we get to this point? Or and the
Right.
I guess the point is that it affects us. It affects everyone. It affects things that are happening in your own backyard. So in Kenton County, we're growing, right, and we're going to be seeing issues like land use with data centers. We have a lot of affordable housing decisions and changes to business landscape and zoning and all of these kind of things at the county level that are actually going to affect us like in our own backyard. So I don't know if you want to talk about how some of those decisions that you see coming up that you would be pivotal or what you would be doing in that position to kind of help people out and how it would affect us.
Yeah, I think there's some real hot topics in here.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
this is really where county decisions start to affect people's day-to-day lives, even if they don't always realize it. But the county plays a coordinating role with cities on big complex issues like land use and infrastructure and funding. You're going to hear me say those things a lot. And in some parts of Kenton County, especially unincorporated areas, it plays a much more direct role. And I think a lot of us live in cities, but there are a lot of people who live in parts of the county that are unincorporated areas. So just kind of put a pin in that. And then I'm going to take data centers as an example. So these are typically, but not always, large scale developments that raise important questions beyond just jobs or tax revenue, because I think we hear those things a lot. But they also raise important questions about things like energy use, road capacity, noise, long term land impacts, like thinking about what is going to happen with these developments or these types of buildings in the future is something that's hard to sort of wrap your head around at this moment in time when they're not even built or maybe not even coming here. We don't know. But the county helps set the framework for how those projects are evaluated and how the impacts are managed, often working alongside cities and regional partners to make sure that growth is balanced and thoughtful and not disruptive. So affordable housing, so I'm just going to kind of switch gears for a second. Affordable housing is kind of similar in the sense that the county doesn't build housing itself, but county level decisions really influence what's possible through things like land use policy. Here we go. I'm going to say the things again: structure, investment, and funding, how funding and incentives are structured. And when the county coordinates well with cities, it can help expand housing options in ways that fit the character and needs of those different communities. Because with 19 municipalities in Kenton County, we have a lot of cities and unincorporated areas. We have a lot of municipalities and people who have different needs in their direct communities. So infrastructure, like I'm going to kind of tie this back around again. Infrastructure is a good place to see this coordination in action because cities may identify local road needs, but the county can really serve as a catalyst in helping secure state and federal grants and bringing resources to projects that would otherwise really be out of reach. There's a really good example of that happening right now in Park Hills that I won't go into the details because it's not what we're here to talk about today, but it's a good example. And then if we think about that, for unincorporated parts of Kenton County where there aren't mayors or city council, the county has a direct responsibility to engage with residents and really understand how direct or decisions around development and housing and infrastructure, here we go again, will affect them in those areas especially. This is where clear communication and early engagement really they're not optional, they're really essential. And kind of to bring this all back to the big picture, county government really helps shape how growth happens, whether it supports communities and quality of life or creates challenges that people then have to live with. So hopefully county government is doing more of the former, supporting or even improving quality of life. And that's really the goal.
Yeah, well, communication is critical. You just mentioned it there, and as we talked about earlier, your education experiences, really set you up for success in public service, at least in my opinion. And with the rise of social media, misinformation can spread like wildfire. So you've spent your professional career, as we discussed, in strategic communications, and I think effective and transparent communication and early engagement, as we just discussed, with the people is critical, especially when decisions made at the commissioner level can be intricate, even like behind the scenes, we don't see it happening and it affects a lot of people. It affects everyone. And it involves planning and coordinating with a wide range of governmental agencies. So how do you plan to tackle this so, people can be really kept informed of what's going on and make sure that we get their input and we're serving, the public as we should?
Yes. So social media is definitely it's a mixed bag. And it's often
For sure.
louder, it's
Yeah.
more immediate. It's like, it moves so fast. And it's more public than a lot of other forms of communication. But all things considered, I still think of it just as communication. And there are a lot of opinions out there and people are entitled to them. We see it in the comments all the time. And the responsibility, I'm going to get really serious here for a moment because the responsibility of governing bodies isn't to react emotionally to every comment, but to listen and assess what we're hearing and factor that into how we make decisions. It doesn't have to be the basis of how we make decisions, but it's important to take note of. So, I'm going to say, I don't think it's productive to get worked up about insults or tone that we don't like. But what I pay closer attention to are inaccuracies, because those are often a signal that the information that people have isn't complete or clear or accessible enough. And when misinformation shows up,
Mm.
it's actually usually an opportunity to really ask, what did we miss in how we explained this, more than it is some other kind of reaction. This might not surprise you, but I think about this a lot like an editor, because when someone reacts strongly to a piece of writing or design, their suggested fix may not be the right one, but the reaction itself is useful data. It tells you something isn't landing the way you intended, and that's really a cue to revisit the message and not dismiss the audience. So for me, tackling misinformation really means being proactive and staying calm and treating communication as an ongoing conversation. And clear early explanations and a willingness to adjust how we communicate, they really go a long way building trust, even when the decisions themselves are complicated.
Yeah, and to me, that's just a demonstration of responsible leadership.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it's so good to hear people who are looking to hold those positions of leadership have that mindset, because for so long now in the past decade or so, we've seen kind of the erosion of that. No, and it's true.
Uh,
And I think the general public is just craving for good, strong leadership and responsible leadership. So I commend you for that and making that something that you want to make as a foundation for that position that you would be holding. So
Thank you. Yeah, I feel that way too.
and I think also your 4 terms on Park Hill City Council probably prepared you a lot for making that jump from that position to commissioner position now. And I don't know if you feel the same way about that, but it seems like, you're ready. You're like locked and loaded, ready to go on day one.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready. I mean, you can prepare all day, forever, but I feel ready. Really, serving 4 terms on city council has really given me a really practical understanding of how government actually works. So not just in theory, but in practice. So I've spent years now, this is my 8th year, reading budgets and reports and working through zoning and infrastructure decisions and seeing how county and state policies really show up at the local level. How many times do I say, KRS says XYZ, things like that. And one of the biggest things that this experience has taught me is how interconnected all of these systems are. So really, like city decisions truly don't happen in a vacuum. They're shaped by county funding, regional planning, state and federal rules. And, I can talk about all kinds of different examples, but having worked on the city side, I really understand what cities need from the county to be effective partners, whether that's clear communication, coordination, or support in navigating grants and larger projects. Um, it's also prepared me for the pace and complexity of the work. I'm used to balancing competing priorities and listening to different perspectives and making decisions that might not necessarily make everyone happy, although I try, but they're grounded in process. Process is like so important to me, transparency and long-term impact. At this point, I would say moving to county level really feels like a natural next step, and it's an opportunity to really bring that hands-on, people-centered experience to decisions that affect not just one city, but communities across all of Kenton County.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's great. Yeah, makes sense. And I've heard you say that, and we just talked about through the kind of the information and communication that you want to ensure that your decisions made in the county are made with a people-centered approach. And when you're elected, we're sitting here 4 years from now, what does people-centered success look like for Kenton County's future?
So for me, people-centered success is really about 2 main things: people feeling heard and people feeling informed. So
Hmm.
4 years from now, what I want is for Kenton County residents to have a clearer understanding of what county government actually does, who's involved in making those decisions, and how to engage with that process. I'd say that last piece is really the most important. One thing I think about a lot is how many people don't realize what they're voting for at the county level. I want I'm hoping to change that. So, for example, people often don't think they're voting for, or I'm sorry, they think that they're voting for a judge when they're voting for the judge executive, but the
Hmm.
executive part is really what's key to that role. So that tells me that we have work to do around basic civic understanding, and that's really a communication opportunity more than it is a failure of public understanding. So I'd also love to see a future where people can name their county commissioner and know that person represents their districts. And that kind of visibility really matters because it signals accountability and access. So if 4 years from now, people feel comfortable asking questions, knowing where to go for information, and trust that their county leaders are listening and explaining, not just making decisions, that's what people centered success really looks like to me.
I love that. And I've said a couple times before on the podcast that if you don't know who your representatives are, they're not doing their job. And it kind of
Right.
Yeah.
goes to what you're saying, that you want people to know who their commissioners are. And it's important, and we need that communication for sure. And speaking of who the commissioner is, you are not facing a primary challenger, but you are running against an incumbent in this position. So tell me a little bit about what sets you apart and why your vision is better for Kenton County.
Yeah, so I'm the only candidate who's running against an incumbent. So there's a lot there. But I also I want to be really thoughtful about how I answer this because for me this isn't about personal attacks. It's really about accountability and engagement. So kind of tying this into like what we just talked about, what I've heard consistently from people across Kenton County is that they want to know who represents them and what that person is working on. And that kind of goes for any seat, anybody who's representing them. So one thing that stood out for me is that people tell me that they don't know who their county commissioner is or
Right.
what issues that office is focused on, even people who live in the district and who are incredibly informed people. And that tells me that there's an opportunity to do this work differently. And I believe that representation requires visibility. It means communicating regularly, explaining priorities, and showing up even when you're not being challenged. And when someone has held a seat for a long time, as my opponent has, especially without much electoral competition, it can be easy for that connection to weaken. I hear from people who feel disconnected or uncertain about whether their concerns are being reflected at the county level, and that's a big deal.
Mhm.
And, my approach is just different. I believe that county leadership should be accessible, communicative, and responsive because this is a county-wide office and every voter in Kenton County gets a say in this race. I think that's important to note is while we run technically in districts, everyone in the county votes for all three commissioner seats.
Mm.
It's not just by district. So, it's important that every resident feels informed and represented. I respect the experience that people have. I mean, I have my own and I appreciate it when others appreciate my experience. But I also believe that this is a moment where some fresh energy and consistent engagement and, my people-centered approach can really strengthen the trust in our county government and better meet the needs of our growing and changing Kenton County.
Yeah, the incumbent has been in office, held that office since 2010. So,
That's
we're
right.
going on 16 years. So, yeah, maybe it's time for a change.
I think so.
And to be in that position for 16 years, that a lot of people don't know who they are, right? Kind of goes to
Mm.
the point for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, we got to know you a little bit. We got to know your positions, your vision, and we also do a little lightning round with all of our guests to get you know you a little bit better on a fun side if you're up for that.
Absolutely. This is
All
my
right,
favorite
you're
part.
you're up for being in the hot seat.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's do it. And just from talking to you now, I think I may know the answer to this question. Um, do
I'll
you
make a
rely
wager.
on a structured routine? Do you rely on a structured routine, or do you thrive on like just being spontaneous?
I am definitely more structured and, it's truly the editor in me, I think, comes out. I do like a little spontaneity, but it's, I would say that my best self really responds to spontaneity with a structured plan. Or or, I like a little spontaneity with an outline.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as you know what's going to happen on the spontaneous day, right? No,
To
and I
some
love it.
degree.
You being that like the editor in you, and I am someone who is not that, right? You do your personality test and all that kind of stuff, but I think those things are real. Like that is the way that you are structured, and I am structured. You know what I mean? And that's why we need people to do different things. And what makes good teams, right, is they have people with those different core competencies. So yes,
That's
you
right.
would.
I think it's important to know yourself,
Yeah,
I think that's important here
yeah.
too.
Well, let's say on a spontaneous day, you find $500 in the junk drawer, the city's junk drawer. What's the first thing you would buy for the community?
Well, I love this question, and you're going to see my structured approach here.
Okay,
I know you're trying to throw something spontaneous at me, but I'm
that's
still
not
gonna
going to
make it
happen.
structured. But so, as a council member, I don't get to just spend extra money on my own. Really, budgets are a team sport. I know it's like but it's true. But I think what I would do is I would absolutely advocate for something like a small community event or a project that would really be like a low cost investment that would bring people together and really create some extra real civic pride.
Nice.
That's fair. Civic pride. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. And being proud of something in your community, what would you say is the most iconic Kenton County landmark? The Roebling Suspension Bridge or the cathedral down there in Covington?
Oh boy.
I
Okay.
know that's hard. See, I gotcha.
It's a hard question, but I have to say that I would choose the Roebling Suspension Bridge, but I want to say also that this is coming from someone who studied Gothic architecture,
Oh,
and
okay.
I have a really deep appreciation for the Cathedral Basilica. I want everybody to have to shine in this answer. But I will say that the Roebling is such a powerful piece of engineering and design, and it was the first of its kind, and it became the prototype for the Brooklyn Bridge. And I love the symbolism of a bridge that literally connects people and places. It's open, it's public, it's doing its job every day,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
all of that really resonates with me.
It's been an
Yeah.
old trusted.
I've got the opportunity to see the Brooklyn Bridge many times and actually walk over it once or twice and drive over it. And every time, I'm thinking of the Roebling Bridge and just the history of that. It's really amazing. And it's a real point of pride for us around here, or it should be, that was the prototype for one of the most famous and iconic bridges in New York City.
It really is, and I think it's a beautiful piece of architecture.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Brian and I joke a little bit on this podcast because traditionally, and I think with probably maybe 90% of our podcasts, we've had our guest pets come and visit them during the podcast.
Right.
You have not. I haven't seen any visitors in yours.
No, I'm really disappointed, actually.
But you do have cats. So I'm got to ask you a cat question. Okay. Here's a crazy cat question for you. How many cats are too many?
So I don't know if either of you remember, this is like a long time ago. There was this meme called "Can't Hug Every Cat," but go look it up. You'll be delighted. There's like the regular version and there's a songified version.
Okay.
And maybe I'll send you a link to this after we're done here so you can check it out if you haven't seen it before. But anyway, so I'm definitely I have an understanding that I've come to grips with the fact that I can't hug every cat.
Right.
I wish that I could,
Can't save them all.
but and I don't think that there are too. In theory, there is no such thing as too many cats, but in practice,
Right.
2 is really just right for me.
Absolutely. Yes. As long as they get
And
along. All right.
exactly, yes.
This would be easier for you. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
So I am definitely more of a morning person, but
Yeah.
mostly just because I love breakfast and I love coffee. And one of my favorite things to do is to just grab a cup of coffee with a neighbor and catch up. And it's really how I start every day.
I'm one of those weird people who don't drink coffee. So I
Oh.
love the sound of it. I love the I'm going to sit here and have a cup of coffee. I just don't drink it. I'm missing out.
Okay. I definitely did not know that before I agreed to do this podcast with you.
Well, we
I'm
usually
having some
record at
second
night,
thoughts
so you
here.
wouldn't have known.
I'm having some second thoughts about your character, Natalie.
Well, Sarah, I have an extra credit pop question for you though. So this is
Oh, bring it
unusual.
on.
We've never
Let's
done
go.
this before, but we talk a lot about yeah, we talk a lot about grassroots organizing and how important it is to engage at the precinct level. So your bonus question is, do you know which precinct you live in?
100% I do.
Yeah.
Not only do I know that I'm in Park Hills number 1, because there's only one in Park Hills,
Oh, that's
I
easy to
also
remember.
know the code, which is A123.
Nice.
There you go.
Slam dunk on that one.
Yeah, well, I didn't
Yeah.
think I was going to be able to trip you up on it, but I did want to just kind of show the importance of the precinct organizing because I've been doing a little bit in my precinct the last few weeks, and it's really just been a lot of fun going out, and it's so important for that grassroots neighborhood, talking to each other, kind of motivation and visibility that I think is really going to help flip seats in November. So we'll put a
100%.
link to where people can we actually already have on our website under our election center where you can go on and you can put in your address and find out which precinct you're in and who your representatives are because you may not know because we don't hear from them too often. So
That's right.
thank you for playing along, Sarah.
Of
Yeah.
course, I love it.
Thanks so much for joining us, Sarah. So, how can all the listeners and viewers learn more about your campaign and get involved?
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been
You know, I
great.
I could do this every day, and people can learn more about my campaign and find ways to get involved at sarahforkentoncounty.com, and I am also on Facebook. I share updates as often as I can, and I really appreciate hearing from anyone who wants to talk with me in Kenton County or beyond.
All right, great.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It's been great.
All right. Take care. Thanks again.
Thank you. You too.
And that's it for this candidate interview edition. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming podcasts or exclusive material. And don't forget, you can join the conversation at our Facebook and Instagram pages or at blue.podcast.com. Until next time, stay curious, keep the facts in focus, and never stop fighting for what matters. Peace out, everybody.